I'm Lily, and you know what? I'm doing back-to-back Commander Cube videos because it's my channel. I do what I want, and if I want to talk about the niche format that only I care about that doesn't really get views, so be it. uh, so, recently, Wizards had the whole mystery booster product, which was this really cool kind of like chaos draft-like format. But more curated so it works a little better, so it's still the same original feel of Chaos Draft, but not actually like pure Chaos Draft. It was actually like a curated booster experience. And one thing they included for the convention version of these is these kind of, they're not real cards, they're joke cards. Or not so much joke cards, not like Silver Border, but like these weird experimental cards that are the playtest cards that are officially not cards. They're not officially magic cards for any reason, but of course people, like, they look like magic cards, they play like magic cards. People are going to use them as magic cards, and one of the places you can use that, I think one of the best places to use it, is in a cube format, because these were kind of meant as fun things to use in like limited, and hey, this is a cool thing to do. Like, Commander Draft is cube is just exactly kind of that. I just want to do fun, cool things in limited. So I thought I would go through and review every single one of these cards for Commander Cube, because a lot of them are really cool. Notably, a lot of these are currently at the higher end of the price spectrum. Like, not many of them have been opened because there's only been a few GPs that actually have had them. But this draft is going to be going all the way through 2020 at Magic Fests, so there will be plenty of them opened, and as the year goes on, they'll definitely drop in price, because right now, like, most of them average at like $20 to $30, and some of the higher end ones being like $60 plus. So, yeah. I mean, then there's just some that are like $8 to $10, but it's like most of them are just like, you're not really wanting to go out of your way that much right now, but just wait a little bit and they will go down in price. Yeah. But other preamble stuff is, this is probably gonna be a multi-part one, just because there's 121 of these fun little friends, and we can't get all those in one video, so I'll probably break it off about 2 parts. And then finally, Commander Cube. For those who don't know, it is a format that's a cube that you draft a commander deck. And, you know, I'll explain more things that matter as time goes on. But, we got a lot to get through, so, some of them just fly through if they just do not apply to our format. So, because, again, we have a lot to get through. So, starting off, we have Arousal Vanguard, which is a brand new Vanguard card, which doesn't really go into a normal booster very easily. Like, you could just include a normal booster, but Vanguard cards aren't really meant to be drafted, and it has a weird thing where it's, if your cube uses Vanguard, sure, and I mean, I've been trying to figure out a way to incorporate Vanguard into my Commander Cube, but I haven't gotten there yet. But really, it's one of those things where, like, this is just so specific, you're not likely to be incorporating Vanguard unless you already are, and if you already are, incorporate this how you will, but otherwise, don't worry about it. Next we have Banding Sliver, which is a 5-mana 3/3 sliver that gives all slivers banding. Okay, regardless of how actually useful this is, Tribal, as always in Commander Cube, is very difficult outside of things like Tales and Poems, and honestly also just the cost of having to figure out how banding works is just too high. I generally, unless you're a group of judges who like figuring out what banding does, maybe don't include banding cards in general in your cube. Just a thought. That said, like, if you're gonna put a tribe, if you're gonna heavily support a tribe in a cube, if you're not doing like humans, slivers, like, besides like humans being probably the easiest ones and elves to a lesser extent, then slivers is probably a pretty good option for that. Just because there's so many. But maybe not that one. Baneslayer Aspirant, which is 1 and a white for a 2/2. That gets +3/+3, flying first strike and lifelink as long as you have 1 or more emblems. it's cool design, but you can reliably get an emblem, even if like you're going out of your way, like unless you manage to get your commander to be like Gideon ally of Zendikar. This is never online, and even then, it's just a fine card. It's nothing insane for the amount of effort to actually make it good. So, Baneslayer Aspirant probably isn't something you really want in your cube. Enroll in the Coalition, which is a 3 and a white for an enchantment. You are a flag bearer. While choosing targets as part of a casting a spell or activating ability, your opponents must choose at least one flag bearer if able. So, this is an interesting one, whether it's good in Commander Cube or not, because it's like, on one hand, yeah, it does make you a target if like anyone wants, like, it is one of those things where it's a lot of like direct damage spells that could do anything. Like, it diverts their ability to make a lot of answers and stuff. That said, there's lots of cards that are like, target player draws cards, and it lets you draw those cards instead. Or realistically, your opponent just doesn't cast them. But the thing is that I feel like flag bearers in multiplayer formats are almost of a liability. Just because, how do you say words? Because one of the things is that, yeah, you want to protect your own, it's useful in level 1 because you get to protect your own stuff and everything. It's like lightning rodded towards the flag bearer. And it's even not as great if the flag bearer is your face. But everything gets lightning all towards the flag bearer because you want to protect your stuff. But really, the thing in Commander is that, you know what the most efficient removal spell is in Commander? Your opponent's removal spell. If you can convince one of your opponents to take care of opponent B's stuff, you've spent no resources, and this kind of makes it that, like, if anyone wants to answer a threat that has, like, targeted, like, removal that can hit players, you have to do it. So I just feel like there are situations where it'll be really good, but otherwise usually not really that great. So I think that Enroll in the Coalition is just way too weird and niche to really make it useful in a Commander Cube, and the fact that it's a liability to cast is kind of awkward. And I think that's a lot of these cards. There's some of them that are just like, yeah, this worked really well, and there's one like this which is like, it has a cool effect, it isn't broken, but it just isn't useful. Next we have 5 Kids in a Trench Coat, which is 2 and a white for 1/5. This counts as 5 creatures for spells and effects that count the number of creatures you control. So essentially, kind of like if something says like draw a card for each creature you control, or I don't know, and things like that's the main factor and things like that, where it's if it dies it makes 5 Blood Artist triggers and things like that, and it's like, it's a cool effect, but like, obviously look at your cube and see if like, oh, do you have lots of effects that are like camaraderie and not Rhythm of the Wild. It's the one, not Theros, but Fate Reforged, Shamans, whatchamacallit, that draws cards, it has Ferocious. But those sort of card effects, if you have like lots of those effects in your cube, yeah, maybe, but otherwise it's a 1/5 that doesn't really do anything or synergize that well. So yeah, I'm just like, it's fine. Sure. Moving on. Frontier Explorer, which is 1 white for 2/1 Cat Scout, and you pay 3 and tap it until turn of turn. You may play 1 basic Plains card from outside the game. This is absolutely fantastic. Like, it's a way for essentially white to get pseudo card advantage. Like when it's in play, like they can like hit their lane drops if they need to every time, and really it's just a really neat effect that in white and a color that doesn't really kind of get these things. So I think that this would be a great card to include in a cube, just as kind of this, yeah, it's kind of mana intensive, but it's a thing that white doesn't really get access to, and it could be really good. Also a kitty, so yeah. Imaginary Friends, which is 1 and a white for a sorcery. Create 3/0/0 white spirit creature tokens with flying. Like, this is one where it's like, I think that the best use for this is like, do you have a deck with lots of death trigger effects? Where, at which point, like, this could be really interesting, because it's like, this is automatically like 3 aristocrats triggers, but at the same time, is it worth a full card for just 3 aristocrats triggers when there are many cards that could also just generate 3 bodies that actually can be used as bodies, can actually be sacrificed and stuff like that, where it's like, I guess, yeah, if you have like a lot of effects that care about like aristocrats and stuff, but it's like, let's be honest, at the end of the day, it isn't that much more useful than like Raise the Alarm or a similar effect like that just makes some tokens. Just because at least other decks can use those. It's just way too niche to really be good. It's like an okay card if you have the right shell, and unplayable outside of that. Which just makes for not a good cube card. Next we have Metagamer, which is white for a 2/2. That cards in the winning decks of the latest Mythic Championship cost 1 more to cast. So like, this is a cool effect, but I just feel like the upkeep of this, like keeping track of what cards cost more, is a bit high. Also, it's like most Mythic Championships are going to be mostly focused on like 60 card formats, so it's like they're not going to be usually the most relevant stuff in Commander, like sometimes they might be. And like, it's a cool tax effect, but just like keeping up of what actually this counts for is just a bit too much. Where it's like cute, but not really what we want to be doing. Priority Avenger, which is a 4-mana 3/4 flying. Players cannot cast instant spells unless a spell or ability is on the stack. Now, this is a really cool, like, kind of like, it's not like a pure like hate bear or something like that, but it's like, well, it's not like a straight tax effect or like you cannot cast them, but it really adds this really interesting dichotomy of like, okay, instants have to be instant, and I really like that, and I think like it's reasonably costed. It's not back-breaking in a lot of situations, but it's just like, yeah, you have to like take your advantage when you can. So I think yeah, no, that seems it seems fantastic. I love this effect, and honestly, one of those things that like slowing down some other colors is something that white really likes. Next we have Rough Underdog Champion, which is 2 white for a 3/2. That says all hounds are dogs. We'll rattle this later to be true. First strike and lifelink. Underdog. If you lost a game this match, card name and other dogs you control get +1/+1. Okay, a few things. A, it's a monocolor legend, and monocolor legends you cannot evaluate as commanders, Commander Cube, just because realistically you could be playing 2, 3, 4, 5 color decks. Very rarely you're going to be playing monocolor. It has a tribal element, which tribal is just hard to make work. At the end of the day, it itself is just a French vanilla creature, and multiple matches happening, or games happening in like a match of Commander is, I mean, it's not unlikely, but it's like, it's way too specific, where it's like, as much as I love a good dog, I don't think that this is a good dog for Commander Cube. Sarah's Wings, 1 white for a tribal instant angel. Target creature or player gains flying until end of turn. Players of flying can't be dealt damage by creatures without flying. So it's like part combat trick where you can give a creature flying, but also partial fog, and I guess, I don't know, is your cube that wants to have fogs, even if they aren't like fully fogs, and like, I guess maybe, like most of the fogs I like are like the ones that you can recur in Commander, things like Spore Frog, and this doesn't really have any sort of recursion. It's not a full fog, which is what I really want to see. So I'm not huge on Sarah's Wings, even though it has fantastic art. Scaled Destruction, which is 4 white for sorcery. Choose one. Destroy all small creatures, destroy all medium creatures, or destroy all large creatures. A small creature has total power 4 and toughness 4 or less, a medium 5 to 8, and large is 9 or more. This is a fantastic board wipe. It's very selective. You can like make sure that you take the least amount of damage from it. It is a neat kind of classification of creatures, and yeah, I think just overall this is a fantastic and neat take on a board wipe, kind of like a variation of like a steer command that we haven't really seen. Yeah, and the fact that it's one or more, that if you just need it to be a straight Wrath of the God, you can, or you could keep specifically what you need. Stack of Paperwork, which is 1 white for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card. And now combat's damage uses the stack. Well, first of all, it's a 1-mana enchantment that replaces itself. So the floor is very low for this, where it's like Enchantress loves this. And honestly, especially like I think one of the things is like Aristocrats or any sort of sacrifice build adores damage on the stack, because you can like attack, deal damage, and like not Aristocrats, because you can just sack after damage is dealt and stuff like that. But essentially, like you can do a lot of cool stuff. Where it's like if you have things like how do I say that? There's ways to abuse damage being on the stack, but at the end of the day, like it's a cool thing that like it's like a nice throwback to old Magic. But at the same time, the fact that it replaces itself means like as a card, it's usually playable. Like damage playing on the stack is sometimes relevant. Like typically the stuff you're doing in Commander means that like making damage on the stack isn't super important. But yeah, no, I think it's cool. And definitely doable if, but I would definitely make sure that either you or the people you play with are familiar with how damage on the stack works, because for newer players it is a little bit unintuitive, and all the implications of it. Next we have Wizened Arbiter, which is white for a 2/1. When it enters battlefield, you may reveal a white card you own from outside the game. If you do, exchange that card with a card in your hand. I mean, you know me with like, I love sort of like wish cards in Commander Cube, because like wishes you normally can't do in Commander. And this is one where it's like, yeah, you can ask this and grab something from your like that you drafted but art is in your deck, and the fact that it doesn't give you card advantage, but like that it swaps from your hand, and you know that's just got some neat filtering. So I quite like it. And it's also kind of an effect that white doesn't normally get. You're in command. 1 and a white for sorcery. Choose target creature you own and control. That creature becomes your commander. Any other commanders you have are no longer commanders, and it starts with a commander tax of 0. This card is fantastic. I adore this card. Like, it's one of the top cards that from these playtest cards that I want in my cube. Like the fact that you can like switch anything, like not just like commanders, like not just legendary creatures, but it's be able to swap like situationally what commander you have, and like the fact that you can like oh, you've cast your commander a lot and it's not really good because it has a huge commander tax now. Nope. This random creature is now my commander, and yeah, it's just like there's not much to say. It's just like it's a really cool effect, and yeah, no, I want this in my cube. It just seems really neat, really fun, kind of like a shake up of like the dynamic of at the table currently, and yeah. Next up, Animate Spell, which is 1 blue for a flash, enchant, instant, or sorcery on the stack. When Animate Spell becomes attached to an instant or sorcery, put that card onto the battlefield under its owner's control. It's a creature in addition to its other types with power and toughness equal to its CMC. When card name leaves battlefield, enchanted creature sacrifices it unless they cast it. So it's really interesting, almost like, it's like you can use it on your own spell, but really it's kind of this weird, like, 1-mana counter spell, where it's like, it gives them a creature equivalent to the size of instant or sorcery, that they cast. Okay, not quite counter spell, it's like dispel, or whatever equivalent of dispel that would cast instant sorcery. So yeah, it's just like a really, really interesting effect, and could be really cool. It's kind of like a form of blue counterspell that, in a way, that's really fun and kind of wonky, but could be very interesting. Biting Remark, which is a 4-mana 3/3 with flying, and has Scrycast, which is if you see this card while scrying, you may reveal it and cast it by paying 0. It's a cool effect. It's an interesting, like, kind of like Pangelical Worm-esque thing, but at the same time, it's a 4-mana 3/3 flyer, and really, if you draw this, it's terrible. Like, if you can scry and get it, it's great, but it's just like the actual upside of getting a free 4-mana 3/3 sometimes when you manage to scry for it, it's just like way too specific, and it's just awful if you actually draw it. So I just think it just isn't powerful enough to really make it there in Commander Cube. Command the Chaff, 6-mana instant. Look at target opponent's sideboard. You may cast a card from that sideboard without paying its mana cost. Exile card name. So this is actually another, like, kind of like wish card, except it's not wishing from your own wish board. A card that I adore. It's what is it? Not treachery. You know what I'm talking about. Bribery. Bribery, that's it. It was an Uri card. Like, it's a bribery, but for your opponent's sideboard. And, like, in Commander Cube, there's gonna be some good stuff in there, too. Because it's like, there's all the stuff that isn't their color pie, but, like, or Commander's color identity, that still is actually real solid. So you're probably gonna get a pretty good hit off of this, too. And I just think this is fantastic. I adore this card for Commander Cube. And not just because it's like I wish cards, but it's also like, this is also just a very powerful card to include. So, yeah. Control Win Condition, which is a 6-mana Star that cannot be countered. It has Shroud, and its power and toughness are each equal to the number of turns you've taken this game. If this is in your deck, please keep track of your turns. That means you, Mark. I mean, speaking of that last point, it's a cool card, but I just think it isn't good enough to really warrant inclusion. Like the amount of, like, kind of upkeep you have to keep track of how many turns you've played, and really, because the thing is, it's like, this is Commander. This thing can be chump blocked forever. It doesn't have any form of evasion. It's just a big dumb fringe vanilla creature, and that's not really good enough. So, like, what is this going to be, like? At most, like, it'll make sure it might become, like, a 10/10 plus, but it's like, there's better things you could be doing that have better effects and stuff, and it's not like you can give this enchantments or anything because it is Shroud. So, I'm going to say a big no on Control Win Condition. Do-Over? 1 in a blue for an instant. Restart the turn, except with card name in Exile. First, return all cards as they were as the turn began. For information from hidden zones like the hand, reconstruct them the best you can, and do the rest at random. I like the idea of the card in effect, but I just feel like it's way too... It is really hard to reconstruct a lot of these things, where it can just lead to a lot of, like, I feel like it is one of those very imprecise cards that can lead to a lot of tension, and I'm just not a fan of it, just because it's, like, what do you think when you're resetting an extremely complicated turn? It's like, how do you reset something like that, or a turn where they, like, drew a bunch of cards and cast them and have to redo all that stuff, and it's just a really awkward legal space in terms of, like, what actually do and how do you handle this, and I really don't like I don't really want to deal with that and deal with that kind of drama it might raise. So I'm gonna just stay way clear of do-over. Next up is Enchantmentize, which is 3 in a blue for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature or enchantment. Enchanted permanent is an enchantment and loses all other card types, but it still has abilities. But it is no longer a creature. This is a really interesting one because, like, on one hand, sometimes it will just make a creature in fantastic, where it's if you enchantmentize like a creature that just has a good static, it often is like immune to most board vibes and stuff like that. And other times, if it's like a big like physical threat and like attacking being a creature is important, it becomes an issue where it's you've got to kind of turn one creature into a Theros god in a lot of ways, sans indestructible, and generally that's an upside more than a downside in Commander. So you're mostly looking to like enchantmentize your own thing. I could see this being a common thing in like Enchantress decks. And also sometimes you will cast it on someone else's thing because you just got to get rid of it. Because it's like a big dumb thing or whatever. So, yeah, I like Enchantmentize quite a bit. Even if it feels like I like these like conditional things where like it's an enchantment that's sometimes like its own protection for your board, and sometimes just like it gets rid of a threat on your opponent's side, and in a really interesting, unique way. Like Imprisoned in the Moon is one of my favorite removal spells. Even though this isn't quite that, I think it's really cool. Form of the Mole Drifter. We say 4 mana, 4 blue for a tribal enchantment elemental. When it enters battlefield, draw 2 cards. And you may cast creature cards from your hand as though they were Mole Drifter. You can still evoke this way. They're Mole Drifters. This is absolutely fantastic, and I adore this because it essentially says like any card in your hand you can cast essentially as a divination. You can cast for 2 in a blue and draw 2 cards, and also triggers death triggers and stuff like that. Or you can just play them full 5 mana and just Mole Drift them. And the enchantment itself already got you 2 cards, and yeah, no, I adore this. This is amazing. It's also just like one of those things where it's like, yeah, it's powerful, but it's not broken. It's not gonna like take over the game. It's just gonna turn your hand, like your creatures in your hand, to just being Mole Drifters, which generally is an upgrade because you know what's great in Magic? Drawing cards, and Mole Drifter is a fun card. Another good card for your Commander Cube, Mole Drifter. Innocuous Insect, which is a 3-mana 2/1 with buyback for 1 in a blue. So you may pay an additional 1 in blue as you cast it to return your hand as it resolves. Yeah, but it is on a creature. So it's one of those things where it's like, normally these aren't instant sorceries, but this is why like, oh, you don't actually get the creature. But it has flash, flying, and when you draw this, cast the spell, draw a card. So essentially it's kind of, you can pay like 5 mana to draw a card, and it's something you always have access to, that you can always just dump 5 mana in to draw a card. So when it's in your hand, it's kind of like having like a slightly more expensive Spectral Sailor that's kind of hard to remove. And you know what, sometimes you just do need a 3/2/1 flyer, and you can just get that. But you know, I like it as kind of like a late game, like mana sink, that if it's just like, okay, 5 mana, cycle this, sure. So yeah, I don't hate it. It's kind of like almost like having an enchantment on the battlefield that says pay 5 mana, like draw a card that if the enchantment costs 0, except it's in your hand. So I think that's really cool. So yeah, I actually quite like it for Commander Cube. Cod, Edland Shees Envoy. It is for 2 and a blue for 2/3. All lands are islands in addition to the other types. And it is a 2/3 that gives other hominids, camerids, cephalids, nautilids, and merfolk you control +1/+1. Okay, the tribal element is honestly negligible because it's like I said about everything about tribal in Commander, it's not really a thing unless you're going out of your way for it. So do you care about a card that makes all lands islands as well? An island Urborg? And honestly, maybe, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's yeah, it can help you, but also it kind of helps your opponents because it gives them extra access to blue mana automatically. And really, you're not like taking advantage of like a triple thing where it's like, oh, I have Merfolk with a Pearl Trident, and I can. This is also Lord, and also makes all my not Merfolk with the Pearl Trident. What am I saying? Master of the Pearl Trident, and this lets all my Merfolk get in with everyone because everyone has islands. So I just don't think it does quite enough. And yeah, there's things that it is very good with, things like High Tide and stuff like that. But it's just way too specific, the cards that really makes it good, to make it a good Commander Cube card. Learned Learner. 1 blue for 03 Cephalic. As long as you have a maximum hand size other than 7, it has tap, draw a card. This is another one where it's just like, it's very powerful if you can get that condition, but that condition is just way too hard to get to, where you're not really building around this, and even then, like, otherwise it's abysmal. So I'm gonna say no, it's way too specific. And realistically, like, yes, things that change your maximum hand size are common in Commander, things like Reliquary Tower, Thought Vessel, and stuff like that, but it's actually only a very small number of cards that people aren't gonna have ready access to in a cube setting. So not super high on Learned Learner. Loopy Lobster. 2 and a blue for a question card with 4-faced. Whenever it becomes tapped, move it to the next stage, or stage 1 if it's at stage 4. So it starts as a 1/4, and then a 4/1 with Evolve. So the first time it attacks as a 4/1. A 2/4 with white, or not white, blue card name gets +1/-1 till end of turn. And then finally a 4/4 of Vigilance and tap, draw 2 cards. So obviously you kind of want to, like, you can get it to attack, like, you can tap it like 3 times, you could like draw 2 cards and stuff like that. But I just feel like it's way too, I don't know, it's just way too janky to like just go around and draw 2 cards, and there's just way too more things that can do this more efficiently, where it's like, I think it's a really cool card, it just isn't really what we're looking to do at the speed we want to do it in Commander. Memory Bank, which is 1 and a blue for sorcery, draw a card, and has Bank. If you cast card Bank or Memory Bank from your hand, exile until the end of the match. You may cast it from exile during another game this match. It still counts towards your deck's minimum. So I guess kind of the idea is like 1 and a blue, you cast this, draw card, and then it's like you can cast it like if you like everyone's like, okay, this game finished like game 2. And honestly, I kind of like that, because I find like most Commander nights I do with Commander Cube, we should get in about 2 to 3 games, and kind of those things that could go between games is kind of one of those like silver border, like wacky things that I love playing with. It's kind of like the second cycle from Unhinged that I just adore a ton. So what was that Unclude? No, Unclude had the second thing where it was like, oh, there was second, like, there was one that like, okay, this is a bad ramp spell, but at the beginning of the next game you play with one of the people at the group, you get to ramp at your first turn. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not a huge effect, but at the end of the day, it's a 2-mana sorcery that cycles itself, and then like later on in the night, you get to cast it again, and that's cool. Recyclabird, which is 1 blue for 1/1 flying. When it dies, put a flying counter on target creature you control. Like, I like the idea of having like a keyword counter, but at the end of the day, you're not playing a 1/1 flying that just gives flying to something else. So I'm gonna say a hard no on Recyclabird. I'm sorry. Great at Edric though, but you can't always be playing Edric. Squid Napper. 3 blue for a 3/4. When it enters battlefield, gain control of target creature an opponent controls until card name leaves battlefield, or that player plays the Ransom, which is 6 mana and 2 life. This is a really cool effect. Like, I think it's like a really neat kind of like variation on Ixalan, Demir, lady. The promo has her like kidnapping a dinosaur. Why can't I remember the name? It's like one of the best cards from Ixalan. Nope, not on my head. But it's similar to that. It's really cool where it's like obviously you want to be able to like sacrifice before they can play the Ransom or something. Eventually they can get it back. But it's a body, you can flicker it and do cool things with that, and I think it's just a really neat effect and kind of steal effect. And I like kind of the Ransom mechanic where it's like they can get it eventually. It's not like when you steal someone's commander and it's like, oh no, how am I going to play the game now? Where it's like there is an end in sight. And essentially, even if like you have to force them to take their entire turn off to get their creature back, that's great. The Grand Tour. 1 blue for an instant. Exile target permanent, then put it into their hand. That player discards that card and puts it on top of their library. Then they put it onto the battlefield. So this is just like a really weird flicker effect. And, yeah, I just, I'm not in for like, it's like in the days of now with like Ephemerate being a card, the standard for flickers is very high, and this isn't it. So, no thank you, Grand Tour. Time Sidewalk, which is 4 blue, 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 blue for sorcery. Take an extra turn after this one. If this card is in your opening hand, you may cast it, exile it. If you do, create 4 Time Walk token cards and shuffle them into your deck. Take an extra turn text cards are a kind of contentious issue when it comes to people designing commander queues, where it's like, I mean, honestly, taking extra turn can contentious in EDH, and especially when you start adding in something Time Walk, a banned card in EDH, that's a very interesting thing where it's that's actually like a lot of taking a turn for relatively cheap, and that could be an issue. That said, this is a card that is only good really if it's in your opening hand, because otherwise this is abysmal. You don't want to pay 8 mana for taking a single extra turn, where it's this weird spot, and that makes me kind of not like it, just because it's this big difference between, it's like on one hand it is unplayable, almost unplayable for the person who's has it, or it's just kind of miserable for everyone else because they have like 4 Time Walks, and they're real Time Walks that they can like recur and do stuff like that. They're real Time Walk cards, and I just don't feel like it's I just don't really feel like it's really worth the either end of it isn't a great scenario. So yeah, I'm gonna say probably no to Time Sidewalk. Truth or Dare, which is 1 blue, blue for sorcery. Target opponent chooses 1. Truth. Target player, that player plays with their hand revealed for the rest of the game. Dare. Mill all but the bottom 10 cards of that player's library. Alright, this is an interesting one where it's like on one hand, you essentially put them on kind of like a 10-turn clock, or they play with revealed information for the rest of the game. And it's kind of like a permanent telepathy for just that player. And, you know, I think that's, this could be a very interesting card. But I feel like, but also sometimes there's some decks that want to mill all their deck -10 cards, so it could be like a bit rough for them. And I just feel like most of the time people are going to be saying Truth, and especially when it's like one person playing with their hand revealed, that's just weird imbalance and like information stuff, that as someone who's played with telepathy, it can kind of make the game unfun if you're like feeling like, oh, I'm like playing with my hand revealed, I don't get to have secrets and stuff, and because that's part of the fun, I think, of Commander, is like being able to hold back and having like, okay, I have these answers and stuff, and as soon as I have to reveal that information consistently, that is kind of a feel bad time, and it's not even something like telepathy where you can get rid of it, but oftentimes, or it's a situation where you hit them and they were like, yes, I went to mill, and the person across the table is all of a sudden like enabled your win con. So I'm pretty down on truth or dare, just because it's like lose-lose on both sides of the spectrum. So yeah, no on truth or dare. Visitor from planet Q. 1 blue for an instant creature, alien. All creatures you own flash are instants in addition to their types. Whenever you cast another spell that has 2 or more types, you may draw a card and then discard a card. So it essentially gives all your flash creatures may be instants, so it triggers things like Spellslinger stuff. And then it like synergizes well with like artifact creatures and enchantment creatures and stuff like that. So it's interesting, but I just feel like it's such a narrow theme that's enabling, and for just a loot effect isn't really worth it. So yeah, it's just way too narrow. It's a cool effect, I like it, but it's way too narrow to be consistent. Like, how many artifact creatures and enchantment creatures and flash creatures are you realistically gonna have in a draft deck? It's not super high. So I'm not super high on Visitor from Planet Q, I'm sorry. Blood Poet, which is 2 and a black for a 3/2 vampire cleric. It has Spark. Activate Spark abilities by spending or giving yourself Spark counters. Activate only 1 Spark ability per turn and only as a sorcery. And it has +1. Card name gains lifelink until end of turn, and -3. Target opponent discards a card and you gain life equal to its CMC. So this is a very interesting effect where the Spark mechanic kind of makes you into a planeswalker. Which I guess technically you kind of are within the context of like the theater of the game. But realistically, this is like a 3/2 lifelink on your turn that every 3rd turn is also a discard. And I just feel that like it is way too specific, and like that's just way too slow. Like, just having your opponent discard a card every 3rd turn on a mediocre creature is not fantastic. So as much as I love this card, this is an effect that I'm really looking for, or at a power level that really is useful. So I'm gonna say no to Blood Poet. Bone Rattler. 3 black for a 4/4 that when card name is put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it. When you do, create 4 resembling skeleton tokens from your cards and put them into your graveyard. Resembling Skeleton is a 2-mana 1/1 with 1 and a black for 1/1 that has 1 and a red, and return that card to your hand. And I really like this as opposed to Time Sidewalk, because like, it puts the resembling Skeleton into your graveyard where you kind of want them, and like graveyard shenanigans is one of those things that Black really wants to do, and the fact that it's put in your graveyard from anywhere. So yeah, I really like this. Like, Resembling Skeleton I think is one of those cards that's like borderline fine to put in Commander Cube anyway, and the fact that this is essentially 4 Resembling Skeletons is just fantastic, and I think it's a really cool effect. So yeah, I think Bone Rattler is fantastic for Commander Cube. Buried Ogre. 1 black for a 6/4 with a zombie ogre, and you may begin the game with card name in your graveyard. If you do, lose 1 life. This is another fantastic card where it's like, at the end of the day, having a 6/4 and starting your graveyard for 1 life is an inconsequential cost, and it's also not that super impactful of a card, but for graveyard decks that kind of want to start with stuff in their graveyard, that's a really cool effect. So yeah, it's not like broken, but it's good, and it's a decent effect. So yeah, I think Buried Ogre is really cool. And even outside of like starting with your graveyard, it's just a really decently costed creature. But you're most of the time it's just be starting your graveyard. And the prospect just getting to start with like cards in your graveyard sounds really cool. Celestine Cave Witch, which is 3 and a black for a 2/3 human warlock. Winner's Battlefield, create 2 1/1 black insect creature tokens. When it attacks, you may sacrifice an enemy. When you do, sacrifice an insect. When you do, curse defending player. create an Aura Curse enchantment token that's attached to that player and is an enchant player, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. So it's kind of like, it attacks twice and you can make these curse auras, and obviously if more insects, which isn't super likely, you can do it more. And I don't think it's good, but it's like, it's borderline enough that I think it's like interesting as an effect. So it's one of those things where it's like, this is one I think it really depends on the power level of your cube, where it's like, if you're playing a very high level, high power commander cube, yeah, this isn't going to be that great. But if you're not, like, this could be really interesting. Like, also, actually, there's something to be said that it is 3 bodies across for only 4 mana, and that's not too bad. So, yeah, no, I actually quite like it. So, Chimney Boys, which is a 4 black for a star with flying, and its power is equal to the number of card types among cards in all graveyards, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. When it dies, target opponent puts a card from their hand on top of their library. So it's essentially like a Tarmogoyf, but it's a flyer, and when it dies, they put a card from their hand on top of your library. But it's also 5 mana, which is kind of like not kind of the point of having a Tarmogoyf. So I'm not super big on Chimney Boys. I just feel like it's way too expensive. It's just a French vanilla flyer, and yeah, it just doesn't do enough. So, sorry, Chimney Boys. Corrupted Key. It's 1 black for an artifact, key. As long as it is tapped, creatures you control have Menace and Death Touch. So obviously it's a very powerful effect, but you have to have some way to tap an artifact. And I feel like, unless you have a very strong artifact synergy within your cube, I feel that this is too specific and you really can't get it tapped consistently enough to really make it good, because you want to have a repeatable tapping effect where you're doing this every turn to really make it good, because if not, it's just not that great. So if your cube has a strong artifact theme, I think this is great and a really neat effect, but if not, it's just unplayable. It's too niche. And finally for this one, we've only gone through 40, but we're already like 50 minutes into the recording, so we're probably going to say, well, this is going to be a 3-parter. We're going to end with Cyclopean Titan, which is 4 black, 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 black. That's 8 mana for an 8/4, that when it dies, 2 target land becomes swamp and exile card name. And then pay 3 and tap target creature, then return it to its owner's hand. Yeah, it's just like, I don't really see the point of this. Like, A, it's very expensive for a creature that is not super relevant to Commander, and making 2 target land swamps is interesting, but also just paying that much mana to tap something just isn't good. Like, it's overall just not a good card. I wouldn't play it. So, yeah, that's about where I'm standing on it. And, yeah, we'll just like close it up here for now, and I'll probably spread out the rest of these over the next couple weeks or so. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, just kind of neat, fun cards, and kind of figuring out like which ones could really work in a cube is interesting. But it is a large difference between the ones that are like, this is unplayable and should not be in a cube, and things like, I absolutely fantastically want this card. It's just like a neat spot, and like I like the kind of design experiments a lot of these are, even though they're not like real cards. So yeah. Well, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful night with wonderful dreams, and let me know if you disagree with or have any comments on any of these. And I mean, honestly, I can't wait to draft this format also in at Metrofax Portland later this month. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful night. I already said that. But as always, may your stories smile upon you.